America, my name is Osei-Frimpong. Right now I'm going to tell you how you fix public education, especially at Title I schools. That's it. I'm going to put it all to you. I'll put it all to you. You'll know in 10 minutes how you fix public education at Title I schools in a way that you probably haven't really thought about before, and you're welcome in advance. Let's get to work. So everybody knows about Brown versus Board of Education. You know, we integrated the schools, but we did it the wrong way, and this is important. We integrated the schools at the level of the children, not necessarily the teachers, not the administration, not the board, not the textbooks, right? So when we integrated schools, we should have done it from the power down, not putting the most vulnerable people in control of, putting them under the control of the whites, right? So like, that's not the way you should have integrated schools. You should have integrated school boards. You should have integrated school textbook companies, and integrated school leaderships, and not just make the regular black principal now the vice principal under the white principal at now what is the white school that's integrated. That's not the way you did it, right? That's not the way it was supposed to be done. You're supposed to integrate the power on down. Right, so we confused integration in a way that did not make our schools better. And we confused integration in a way that did not make our schools better. We just wanted more resources. We didn't like, the white ice isn't colder, guys. Like, we didn't want to be next to them necessarily. We just wanted to make sure that our stuff worked, that the water was clean, the books were good, that we had the resources, right? So we should have integrated the power, not the students, or integrated the power first and then have that trickle down to the students, not just integrating the students first and keep them under a white power structure. So that was the problem. So, and this is important because superficially you can say that, you know, integration was good. And how could I be against integration? And I'm saying that the reason why I'm against integration is because we had a naive understanding of what integration means. There's a Malcolm Gladwell episode on this that's actually pretty good. Mrs. Something's Adjustment. I'm gonna look for you. Miss Someone's Adjustment. Malcolm Gladwell, Miss Adjustment. Miss Buchanan's Period of Adjustment. That's what it is. There's a Malcolm Gladwell episode on called Miss Buchanan's Period of Adjustment. Talks about integration. And I wanted to give you that argument in general, that we did it wrong. We should have integrated the power, not the most vulnerable. And that just because you said that we did integration poorly doesn't mean you're necessarily anti-integration. You're just aware that there are consequences of doing things poorly. And I say that to foreground the argument for public schools, because it's going to seem like I'm against public schools. It's going to seem like I'm against public schools. And I'm like this close to just yanking my family all the way out of there in the Title I school and just putting them into a private school. But I like public schools, right? So I think of public schools, and I think public schools ought to be thought of as community resources and community development engines, right? Like the school is the health and the wealth of the community. The high school is the life. The junior high school, or that's the life of the community. I think of them as amazing community centers and community projects that are supposed to be developed in the particular way by the members of the community, and most importantly, the families of the communities. So right now we have a problem with Title I schools because nobody's like learning things. If you, like I said, my kids go to a Title I school, so I can tell you that it's the quality of school that my kids can go from there to anything, but like, it's because they're my kids. It's built like most public education facilities in America. They're built for families like mine. You're stable. I teach them everything that they know. They can go to school and kind of get refreshed, but I don't actually expect the school to develop skills in my kid. And I just expect them to kind of babysit, but mostly move them along in a way that's conducive to their success, but I don't put the onus on them. Everything my kids need to know, they're going to learn from me. And I just understand that. And so it could work out for my kids, but if you actually expect schools to build skills at scale, develop, then that's not the place for you. It's not the place for you because they don't do that very well. My kid's school will not develop kids who are not developed at home. It will not. And that is 75% of the kids. Like 50% of the kids there don't learn anything. They just got to go. They move through. They're not learning anything. And you see the literacy scores, and like I coach cross country there. There are kids, I taught them how to run a mile because I believe in developing skills, but there are kids who couldn't spell mile, and not to mention they couldn't tie their shoes, right? So these are like 7th, 8th graders, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and who couldn't tie their shoes. And like I said, couldn't spell a mile. And honestly, I was the first person who was actually committed enough to actually teach them something. And the reason why I was committed enough to teach them something is because my kid was on the cross country team, and also I am a father of a kid in the school, right? So I'm invested in the school in a way that's different than the teachers are, because the teachers are not paid to teach their kids anything, because if they don't teach the kids anything, they still get their checks. So they're there to keep the ship in order, right? They're there to keep them quietly stupid. Not necessarily stupid. It'd be nice if the kids learned, but it's not like the teachers are like really trying to figure out how to teach the kids. No, teachers, they get their check from a district that is completely indifferent to whether the kids at my kids' schools learn, right? So the kids, 70% of the kids just don't learn anything. They don't learn a thing. And that's not going to change unless people take this argument seriously. And this is not just my kid's school. It's Title I schools in general. We just understand we have the wrong mechanisms, right? Because from the teachers to the administration, they all get paid whether or not the kids learn. And that's one of the biggest problems. So the people with the most invested in both the community and the kids' education are not the teachers and are not the administration and are not, especially not the central administration. It's the parents of the kids in the school. However, and this is where it gets interesting, and this is where my intervention, I think you need to listen up. So start taking the notes now. However, the school has a vested interest in keeping parents out of the school. Whether you call it, it's going to be for an issue of safety. But really, it's to keep the racket going, right? So the racket is the administrators and teachers and the central administrators. They all get paid whether the kids learn or not. And they don't really have anything invested in the kids learning. It'd be nice if the kids learned, but like the administrators and the teachers, they just want to say, oh, well, I tried. We'll get better next time. Here's a hint. It will not get better next time. It's not going to get better in the year. If you're at one of these schools, it's going to keep sucking forever. And as the world gets more technical, your kids are just going to fall farther and farther behind. And by that time, you will have retired off your pension for the 30 years of not teaching black kids anything. All right? So they don't really have an investment. And I say this because there are white teachers who spent 30 years not teaching black kids anything and drawing checks for not teaching black kids anything. And now they live pretty comfortable lives in retirement. Right? So I know it's a case. It's a hustle on everybody's side. And the only people who actually are invested in making sure that's not the case are the parents of the kids who are left out of high school. And people can say like not high school, middle school and elementary school. And for a while, like people had different excuses. Well, it was safety, and then COVID happened, so like they gave them another reason to kick the parents out of school. And then now it's just more convenient for everybody if parents stay out of school, because now the parents don't really know how much the kids are not learning, because among the staff there's a racket. So nobody talks about how much the kids aren't learning because it could jeopardize everyone's paycheck. But if you got a lot of parents in there, then people might actually like start talking about how much the kids aren't learning, and that would jeopardize people's paycheck. And I think a lot of people's paychecks need to be jeopardized. But also I think parents need to be in schools because they're the only ones with a vested interest. And schools are supposed to be extensions of the family. And it's funny because you listen to teachers and administrators talk about the students, and they'll say like, oh yeah, these kids are like my family. I treat them like my family. Well, first of all, they don't. They don't, and they shouldn't. That's a confusion. These kids are not your kids. These kids are the parents' kids, right? So that's a confusion. What you need to do is, if you want the school to feel like a family, you need fathers and mothers inside of school. Honestly, especially with disciplinary problems, you need fathers. Do you know how many disciplinary problems would just go away if there were just like more fathers in the building, like just in the building? If like a lot of guys work, but the guys who don't, if they were just if they felt welcome in the school to sit in on classes with their kid and do pullouts, like a lot of the behavior issues that you find out in classrooms, if there were a few fathers of kids in the classroom, one of those kids would act up and be like, nope, we're pulling them out. The father would pull them out, go to a room and say like, all right, we're doing this lesson one-on-one. Right? And you know what? Kids would read that way. It'd be better for the kids who are left in the room. It'd be, and we would get more accurate information because there are a lot of lying and you can't get a straight answer from teachers or administrators because they're not paid to give you a straight answer. They're not paid to teach your kid. They're paid to keep the racket going because they know that the government's going to guarantee funding for kids. So if they can just kind of keep everyone quiet and keep it moving, it doesn't matter if the kids learn. Like I said, I taught kids 8th grade couldn't spell mile. I taught them how, because I'm actually invested, because it wasn't my primary job. I'm actually invested because my kid was on the team. I actually taught them and did that quality of skill development, which most people don't do because it's hard, right? I actually taught him how to do something. And it was a big culture shock because most people with these kids, they don't actually, it's not just low expectations. It's low expectations, but also just low commitment because they know that their job is just like play hot potato with the kids and just keep passing them along. And they're really indifferent and self-satisfied if it doesn't work out. Because I know what happens in 5 years to these kids. They live in my neighborhood. They live I know what happens. And so I actually care. I want them to be functional people. And the school's not setting them up to be that way, but it could if parents were welcome and invited. And not just parents, like fathers. Now, people don't want a lot of random black men in school because, apparently we're all, they're scared of the school getting shot up and they're scared of pedophiles. But I'm saying that, you need to be more scared of kids not reading. But they're not scared of the kids not reading because nobody really cares if especially black boys go all the way through schools without reading. So yeah, you're gonna have to up the risk. You're gonna have to let people with and now you're gonna have to up the risk, and you're gonna have to allow people with records into schools. And not about my baby, they could be pedophiles or they could shoot up the school. No, they're not going to shoot up. These are fathers, right? These are fathers. These are parents. They're not going to shoot up your school, right? What they will do is actually care about the school, and you can get real information. I do not trust any school administrator. Do not trust any teacher about what's going on in school. They get paid for keeping the merry-go-round going, the music going. But if you have parents in schools, if you have parents patrolling, if you have parents just around, I trust those fathers. I trust a father who just got out of jail for a variety of reasons. People get locked up for a variety of reasons. And I have daughters. I want more black parents. I especially want more black dads in that school. Dads of kids who go to that school in the school. Because those dads, when I pick up my kid or in a casual conversation, they'll actually tell me the truth about what's going on in that school. And their job is not tied to pretending that the kids are learning. Right? So a lot of these behavior problems will go away if just black dads are welcome in. And schools are always hostile places for black males. And that doesn't go away when the people get older. My district's got a blacklist of all the people who are not allowed in school, not allowed to volunteer, and it's ridiculous because as you can imagine, it's a lot of black men who for some reason or another got put on this list. But that's the community resources, and I get in a lot of trouble for talking like this. But honestly, like I said, I feel more comfortable with my daughters around black dads than I do with black moms because black dads just they're as uncouth as we might be, they actually want to teach kids hard skills. They actually care about development, whereas the administrators, the soft guys who actually get the job, even if they're black, maybe that soft is too hard. But the guys who get the job, they still have a vested interest in just keeping the racket going rather than actually doing the thought and the work to develop the children. Skill development's hard. I mean, you see it all the time in like all aspects of Black life, even when it comes down to sports, right? If you can't teach a kid how to do long division, you really can't teach him how to play soccer. And I don't think you can teach him how to play basketball or anything like that. But we have a hard time building skills at the youth sports level because skill development, especially at scale, like is a talent. You have to be attentive in a way and teach these things that are in an incremental way. You need to kind of do it like Mr. Miyagi in Karate Kid. The kid's not going to know and it's not going to be fun, but you have to like develop them in a certain way with certain fundamental habits. And we're bad at doing it. We'd rather just have them play games and hope that they figure it out. Right? But that never works. And it's one of the reasons why, one, Black basketball isn't as good as it could be, but it's also one of the reasons why Black reading scores are not as high as they could be, because it's a failure in taking skill development seriously as something that is teachable. Because honestly, a lot of women want to pretend that these things aren't teachable, but it turns out that they are. But if you pretend that they're not teachable, then, or that you tried, even if it didn't work, then you're not on the hook for actually failing to teach them, or you don't have to like strategize about how to teach them. All right. So the biggest intervention is the intervention I want to make in the public education discourse is saying that public schools are community resources where parents are actually the only people with a vested interest. And insofar as we don't need it for the money, we need it for the development of our child, right? And especially if the teachers are scared about a district over many schools, that the district over many schools does not care about your particular school. And so the teachers who are paid by the district that is indifferent to the particular welfare of that school, then that indifference gets diffused among the professional staff, right? So it's going to be parents who are indifferent to all of the other schools in the district, but care about this particular school because that's where their kid's going. That's going to be the hope for the future. And a lot of these neighborhoods actually are diverse enough where if parents are welcome, they could fill in a lot of gaps. But the schools don't want the parents welcome because that screws up the grift. That screws up the racket, right? So I was always, so we need to reimagine public schools or like actually understand what public schools are as extensions of the family, not extensions of civil society, right? So families are busy. They can't always do everything they need to specialize and teach their kids, so they send them to school to learn. But we need to understand that extension needs to flow from the family, and that parents should be physically in school as much as possible. And that's a culture shock. And the administrators don't like this because it makes it a little bit harder to control. You need a different kind of infrastructure. But look, these schools are so bad that no idea should be just laughed out, because as it stands, they're failing. The kids can't read. Can't do math. And math is one of those things where if you can't do it at third grade, it doesn't get easier when you go into eighth grade. It's just kind of, it builds. So someone asks, what are the pedagogical methods that teachers should employ? Well, it's not up to teachers anymore. At some point in time, we need to understand that we're talking about regular people in an extraordinary situation who are themselves not extraordinary. Well, readings obviously should use phonics. And I have curriculum that I think teachers should use. But overall, the big intervention needs to be structural and understand that the incentives are just not there for teachers to do their jobs. The only people who are incentivized to make sure the kids learn are the parents, so you need to welcome in parents, not just at some sort of symbolic meeting or meet and greet or some sort of lunch, but like as a part of the school culture. We need just dads. Dads is everywhere. That'll take care. You don't even need SARs. You just need random dads. Random dads talking to other random dads, because dads will talk to other dads and say the truth about your kid, and that dad will fix it, right? So you don't need police officers. You need more dads. I'd rather have dads with criminal records than more police officers. And like I said, I'm a father of daughters, and that's what I'm saying will fix my school. Like more regular dads in the schools, and especially poor schools, Title I schools. Because these dads will tell the truth to other dads and to other people about what's not happening in the school, and what's not happening is skill development. You go to a PE class in my kid's school and it'd be shocked, but you wouldn't know unless you're actually there, unless you actually lay eyes on it. The guys playing ball wildly, and the girls are on their phone in the corner, gossiping, right? That's a PE class. That's a PE, like, it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. But the only reason it is accepted is because not everyone knows about it as such, right? And the people who do know about it as such work at the school, and so they have a vested interest in keeping the racket going, right? So you got to wrestle power away from the teachers and administrators, because they are not beholden to parents. They're beholden to the people who pay their checks, which is a central board, not just a central board, a central administration, which is completely indifferent to whether your particular kids learn. And this is what Aristotle knew. Right? So in politics, he talks about how families are themselves incomplete because they're not self-sufficient, so they need to work together to form a community. I'll say this again. Families are themselves important areas of concern, but they are insufficient because they are not self-sufficient, and so they need to work together. And a community and a polity is really a self-sufficient organization of families. But they need to be a self-sufficient organization of families where everyone has particular needs, not like held in common, right? So the idea is that the particularity matters, because then through families, you know how to treat the community. It's not the other way around, right? I know how to treat other people as my own because I have my own, right? It's not as if we hold children in common. No, I have mine, and they're my favorite, and they're mine, right? And that's how I know what care and concern means, right? So if you kind of try to communize the family and try to pretend like, oh, I just care about all children. No, that's not actually how you lead to success in these schools. We need to particularize and understand that we need to get people who invested in this particular school to have power in that particular school. So if it were up to me, actually my school would be emancipated from the district. It's the lowest performing school in the district, lowest performing junior high school in the district. It's like, and you could say, well, that's about money. No, it's not about money. It's about having an administration that is indifferent to whether the kids actually learn, right? And understanding that if they're not indifferent as to whether the kids actually learn, the first thing they need to do is get parents in there as parents. But when parents get in there as parents, they'll find out how bad it is for like the bottom 75% of the school, 80%, the bottom 80% of the school, like functionally illiterate. Top 10% do fine, but they do fine anywhere. But the bottom 80% is functionally illiterate. And the first cue should be, and this is what's important, because like I said, I coached cross country and I coached girls soccer. If your school is constantly losing sports to their peers, that means that the coaches are bad. And if the coaches are that bad, then you can't expect the math teachers to be that much better, because like there's this a culture where skill isn't being developed. Someone says, I find black women TAs in Title I schools tend to help students the most, but they are being underpaid. No, this is some sort of black women magic. No, like black women don't have the skills for this. If black women could fix this problem, there are a ton of black women in Title I schools. If it could be fixed by black women, like just random black women, it would have been fixed. No, they don't have the skills for it because this is about skill development. And this is about teaching things that Black women themselves don't know how to do. Right? This is about teaching things themselves, like teaching math, teaching reading, like at scale. They don't know how to do. They might be nurturing, they might care, but like, no, this is about developing skills. If you can't teach your kid how to swim, if you can't teach your kid how to drive, you cannot teach them how to do long division, you cannot teach them how to read, and you cannot teach them how to play a sport. Right? So you look at the communities where kids can't swim, or where dads teach their kids how to drive and all of that stuff, and you'll find that those communities, it turns out, no one taught them how to do long division or throw a football because dads and men were kicked out of the picture. Right? And they're kicked out of the picture for reasons of safety and pedophilia, but you need to be more worried about, but that's a con. That's a con. They're kicked out of the picture because they might upset the apple cart of poor schooling that keeps everyone getting paid. Right? Nobody, the administrators and the teachers, their income is not tied to whether your kid learns. So their income's not tied to whether your kid learns. Their concern is not really tied to whether your kids learn either, because once they're playing hot potato with your kid and they'll move it through. So the only people really invested are the kid's parents. And then half of those parents are just treated hostilely, and this is mostly the dads, are treated hostilely when they get into school because, like, you know, they might actually say something wrong, right? So the way to fix public education is to understand public education needs to accept all families, and it needs to welcome in parents. Welcome in parents. And I'll give you another analogy that goes to sports. There are some coaches that say no parents are allowed to watch his practice. And this is at elementary and junior high school level. They have closed practices. You know why they have closed practices? Because they're incompetent coaches. And they don't want their incompetence on display. This isn't like proprietary information that they're disclosing in practice. No, they're bad coaches, and bad coaches don't want parents watching them coach badly. Right? That's the same. Like when I was a coach at my kids' junior high school, at cross country and soccer, I welcomed parents in. I want as many parents in as possible. And since I'm actually kind of a smart guy, if you can move at all, I will make you useful during practice. I want you in practice. I will help you, and you will help me run these drills. And that'll make it easier because everything will get smaller for me and we can actually do some more work. So I want parents in. And I realize that coaches who don't want parents in watching the practice are trying to hide something. They're trying to hide their incompetence. And that's the same with teachers who don't want parents in the classroom and administrators who don't want parents in the room. They'll talk about it being about safety and other issues, but really it's a very convenient dodge for them to hide their incompetence. Right? It's hiding their incompetence. So you'll go and you'll hear coaches say like, well, we have closed practices. That means the coach doesn't know how to coach. And is scared of being found out as being a fraud. So that I'll tell you that right now. You should. There's so many reasons to welcome parents into the practice. First of all, they'll help you run the drills, and you get the ratio of adults to kids down, which is always good. It's more eyes and minds thinking about the problem, and also the parents get in on the practice philosophy so that they can work with their kids at home, so the whole team gets better. So any coach that says they have closed practices because they don't want the parents to watch, they just don't know how to coach. And they're scared of getting found out as being ignorant. They're imposters. Because any coach worth a damn will want parents there, want them watching, want them asking questions, want them participating, because they have nothing to hide. And they know that the more people who are hip to what they're doing, the better. The more people on the team who are hip to what they're doing, the better. By the way, Stefan said, nobody talks like this about school. Thank you. That's why I'm giving you the straight dope. you should go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, become a member, because nobody talks about this at school. Nobody actually says that. We've confused what public school means. We think of it as taking all the kids, when really we need to take all of the families that support the kids. And it's just this long-term plan by liberalism to divorce kids from their parents, because liberalism is fundamentally anti-family, and throw them into civil society. And at Title I schools, it just manifestly, especially for black kids, it manifestly does not work. You have nothing to lose by bringing in parents in numbers, and not at symbolic events, but actually, like, we recruit parents. Every team at a public school, especially a Title I school, should have like handfuls of parents just in the classroom. Just like assigned days in the classroom, just watching. And so that they understand and can talk to parents, and like, and then they would know. And like I said, discipline problems would not go away, but they would be drastically reduced, because dads, when some kid was acting up, they'd be like, nope, you're with me. They'd be like, nope, you are with me. We're going to go outside. We're going to talk about this. And that would just solve that. And the sports teams, if at a Title I school, especially as a team that loses, they should have like teams of assistant coaches who are all just parents. There should be from elementary, junior high, even high school, teams of assistant coaches that should all be parents. Like all those assistant coaches. But the school wants to tell you their job as a parent is to provide money and snacks. No, that's not the case. That's part of their scam, because they want money and snacks and for you to stay out of their business so that they can keep their grift going. But they're not invested in the success of that particular school like you are. No one's more invested than the parents. Even the kids aren't as invested as the parents. So the parents need to take control of their public school, especially Title I schools, if they actually want their schools to be more than just a money racket for other people. Their kid is a number for other people who get paid, whether their kid learns how to read or do math. And we need to understand that it's a structural problem. The administrators and the teachers get paid by people who are indifferent to the particular successes of that kid, and often that school, if it comes from the district level, and the district's got many different schools. They are indifferent to whether your particular school can beat the pants off of the neighborhood particular school, the other neighborhood school, right, within the same district. At the district level, they don't care if one school loses all of the time. The only people who care if that school loses all the time and all of the things are parents of the kids of that school. So those are the people who need power, need to be empowered. And usually in these communities, you have enough, especially in a university town with a Title I school, which is a lot of university towns have Title I schools. You'll have enough professors' kids and grad students' kids and people with degrees' kids. You'll have enough where if you actually make an initiative out of substantively tapping and empowering those parents as parents, it could fix a lot of your problems. It could fix a lot of your problems. And they don't have the conflict of interest because their money comes from whether the kids actually learn, or not their money, their sense of esteem comes from whether the kids actually learn, not whether they can move the kid through the grade without incident. Because that's what the teachers and administrators care about. Can we move these kids through without incident and keep the checks coming? And plausibly deny that we tried, and plausibly say that we tried, and offer plausible deniability for why we routinely screw up. Someone asks, what are your thoughts on ethnic studies? I think it's fine. I mean, my biggest problem is you got 8th graders who can't read and do math. So that's the problem. And nobody talks about it. You have fundamentally illiterate, enumerate 8th graders, 7th graders, 6th graders, 4th graders, and nobody's really serious about arresting it. And we turn these kids into losers. We take good kids and turn them into losers. And like I said, I was at the worst school in kind of the district and I was coaching them. And I had to have conversation about like we take good kids and we turn them into losers. Not me. Like all the teams I coached, the kids actually won, and it was a success. It was jarring for a lot of people who just kind of assumed that the kids would always lose. But like the other coaches would just take good kids, because I think our kids were good kids, and turn them into losers. And you can't say that's so. You can't. A kid's not a loser. Well, if they always lose, they're a loser. And you got to figure out, why are you taking these good kids and turning them into losers? You're taking good kids and turning them into illiterates. Because if they're like bottom 75% can't read, they're illiterate, right? So what are we doing, and what are we going to do to stop taking good kids and becoming a loser factory and turning them into losers? Because that's what you do. And what are we doing wrong, and what needs to happen? And I'm telling you, what needs to happen is that we need to invite parents into all aspects of that of Title I schools operations. Because right now the incentives are to keep the losers losing, and losing with good behavior. If we can get them losing with good behavior, the Title I schools win. All right, so someone says, I'm a big fan of magnet schools. Okay, so that doesn't solve the problem. It just skims. It doesn't solve the problem. I'm talking about a very particular problem. How do you take a school of illiterates and actually fix the culture of that school? What's the missing piece? And the missing piece is parents. The missing piece is parents. And they don't want parents in the school, because the parents will actually talk about how bad it is. And the parents are not beholden to a check. They don't need to keep their mouths shut and lie about how incompetent the teachers are. Or not incompetent, how under effective the teachers are. Because it's an extraordinary mandate, and the teachers are basic people. They're not extraordinary people. And it turns out they fail the mandate consistently, year after year, while collecting checks by failing the mandate. And it's not a lack of money. I mean, it's a lack of money. Like, if all of the families were rich, it would be different. But it's not a lack of money on the school. It's a cultural thing about the school, because the school has the culture of keeping parents out. The missing piece is parent with good job. Yeah. Like, if every parent had a good job, that would help. But at schools as they are right now, the missing piece is assuming that the adults, the administrators, and the teachers at the school can do the job. They can't. They actually can't. They fundamentally cannot do the job. And it's not how under-resourced the teachers are. It's the culture that keeps parents out. Teachers hate when parents are there. They have to pretend like they don't, but they hate when parents are there, because parents actually have eyes and realize how much learning is not going on and whose fault it really is. And you need parents who do not work for the school in that school building constantly. And you need administrators beholden to those parents who do not work for the school, but are in the school, constantly in the school building, because they'll talk about like what's going on and who's actually developing skills and who's actually teaching and who's not, in a way that you can't get a straight story from anybody else. So in Title I schools, empower parents, especially get dads in there. Get dads in the school, welcome them in, and there are going to be all sorts of reasons why we want Title I dads out of the school, because they might have records, and so we might have to talk about, well, there might be pedophiles. The first thing is safety. We have to keep it safe. We have to keep the school safe. No, that's an excuse to keep the dirty, to keep it bad, to keep the grift going. Right? You would rather have illiterate kids than have mouthy parents, is what is the problem. Talking about how bad your job is, how bad you're doing at the job. You would rather have illiterate kids. And you got to understand, at Title I schools, it's not going to get better. Everyone says, oh, no, we're going to get better. No, you're not getting better. You're not getting better. None of these schools are getting better. And America is going to become a more skill-based place. So the inability to develop skills is just going to disproportionately, it's going to kill black kids. It's funny because at my school, the one sport that I didn't teach that had to do with girls that actually did well was girls flag football because it was the first year. And the girls flag football team did pretty well. But it's because it was the first year, right? So all of the other schools, it was the first year for them too. And so nobody had skills. And when nobody has skills, we do well. But as soon as the more years that go, and as soon as the girls start developing skills and success becomes a skill-dependent manner, the Title I school that I was affiliated with isn't going to develop skills because like that's just not what they do very well, and the girls are going to be at the bottom. They're going to once again go back to that habit of turning good kids into losers. All right, so someone says, I don't know how much I agree. Every teacher I've heard talk about classrooms environment wish they had parents that were more present in their child's academics. Yeah, at home, not in the school. These teachers don't want parents in the classroom. Administrators don't want parents in the classroom. They want parents to do the teaching at home and then send their kid. I'm saying that if you want a public school, a Title I public school that works, you need parents roaming. You need parents in there. You need parents in there. And that's what the teachers and administrators do not want. Do not want. And they do not want it. It will fix the problem and also expose a lot of the fake teaching that goes on in the schools. Because, like I said, the teachers do not get paid for teaching your kids. They get paid for moving your kids through. All right? So nobody's going to give up the racket. Nobody's going to snitch on the racket except for parents. All right? All right, so someone said, the schools my kids wanted to couldn't get parents to show up. They weren't keeping parents at bay. Well, it depends, right? So a lot of these schools want parents for money and snacks. Money and snacks, not like actual in the classroom like activity. Someone says, do Title I parents have resources to take off a work day? Title I parents barely have jobs. They got time. they got time. The dads are just kicked out. They are made to feel like they don't belong, and they are kicked out. We want your kids. We don't want you. We want your kids. We don't want your family. That's the Title I ethic at schools, and a lot of it's run by black women. So like that, but that's the general ethic. We want your kids. We don't want your family. And I'm saying that that's couched as a safety issue, but what it really is a way to cover the racket. Because like I said, I got daughters. I want more black dads in that school. Just random ass black dads in the school, just around. And if random ass black dads were in the school and around, everything would be better in a non-obvious way. Because like it would, that would be fine. Someone said, someone said, there was a funny post that blew up that was made by middle schoolers critiquing their teachers for exactly what you described. It's kids listing their teachers' shortcomings. Yeah, like the kids know that the teachers get paid no matter what. The kids know that, like, all right, I'm going to learn, and like all of these people are not. And I just have to get okay with that. I just have to be okay with that. And that's garbage. They know that the school are failing. If not them, everybody else. If not them, everybody else. Right? Someone says parents should be allowed to attend school like jury duty. Yeah. They should be allowed. They should be in the room. And like I said, like a lot of the problems are disciplinary problems. Those disciplinary problems go away if parents are there. See, I'm a Suzuki dad, so I understand the Suzuki triangle. If you don't know, Suzuki was a Japanese violin teacher, and he came up with this idea of the Suzuki triangle. You got the student, you got the teacher, and you got the parent. And they all have to be like in the room or present when the teaching's going on for both disciplinary rules and so that the parent understands, even if the parent themselves isn't a musician, so that the parent understands how to help them practice and everyone's on the same page, right? The parent needs to be in the room. All right, so that's a system that works because it understands that parents need to be in the room. We try to do a different kind of system. So someone says, 100% agree. This happened in COVID. Teachers started complaining. Yeah, COVID was a convenient excuses. COVID and Uvalde were convenient excuses to start locking down schools. So someone says, Army, what was that summer program for kids that you said a lot of Asian kids are in? I don't know. There are a ton of them. I do know that Telluride's a good program. Telluride, there are programs that exist for kids, summer programs, but I you know, I don't know what to tell you people. I'm just saying I'm trying to fix public education by understanding where you screw up in thinking about public education. You think of the public as just taking every kid, but really public education needs to take every family. You can't abstract families from kids, right? And this is the most relevant in public schools, Title I public schools, because they need parents in the building more than any other school. And there's no substitute for that. Especially if you're a school in a bigger district, because nobody in that bigger district cares about the health of that particular school, like the parents who send their kids to that particular school. They don't do it for the check. So, like, you need to welcome them. And in COVID and Uvalde and pedophilia gives all the schools all of the excuses they need to shut parents out and keep the racket going, and the kids do not learn, and nobody knows because the parents are shut out. By the way, if you appreciate how I'm talking, you should go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, because I'm simply right. We need to reimagine public schools as accepting every family, welcoming in parents, and stop pretending that these ordinary teachers can do an extraordinary job and that parents are only good for snacks and money. Thank you for your time. I will talk to you at another one. Peace.